And all our fellow HVTNs, good afternoon from Abhishek Nandan. I'm from marketing team, and this is a initiative which has been taken up by Tech Leaders Forum and is ably led by Bhagyashri and her team. Also, thanks to the IT team for arranging this particular training session in this virtual mode. The topic for today's session revolves around basics of Power BI. We will try and cover data modeling and visual reports, data connectivity modes, Power BI mobile app and interactive dashboard, natural language query, and Power BI security and governance. I would like to thank Shreyansh here. Shreyansh is a senior application engineer with Hexaview, and he is with the data team. Shreyansh would be taking up this virtual session, and it's now up to Shreyansh. I hope all of you would gain a lot out of this particular training session that we have organized. Over to you, Shreyansh, now. You can go on.
Thank, thank
Just
you so
to,
much.
yeah, yeah. Just to give a heads up, if you have any queries, any questions, please do write in the chat box. And from time to time, I will throw these questions to Shreyansh and he might answer as well. We will also take up any questions or doubts if you have at the end of this particular session. Over to you, Shreyansh. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction, Abhishek. Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you. Great. So, yeah, so as Abhishek mentioned, this is one of the many webinars that Hexaview is going to host. So, Hexaview is a boutique technical consultancy firm, right, that provides creative custom software solutions to service seekers all around the world, from startups to Fortune top 500 rank companies. We partner with all of them. And at Hexaview, we don't believe that data analysis is just about numbers and statistics. We believe that it's about gaining insights out of your data, identifying patterns, developing narratives, and scaling up your strategy towards growth and improvement. Correct? Keeping that in mind, I'll just walk you through what my day-to-day work experience looks in Hexaview. So I work as a data analyst and I analyze data on a day-to-day basis. And I closely work with one of the tools that we are going to discuss about today, which is Power BI. Now, the first question that comes to our mind when we listen about or when we hear about Power BI is, what exactly is Power BI? Now, the BI in Power BI stands for business intelligence. Business intelligence can be termed as a process in which we gain insight and generate insight from raw data sitting in our data sources. Power BI as a tool provides us with various features and extensions to connect to our data, import it in Power BI, model it or clean it, and then visualize on top of it. Now, there are multiple other reporting tools that are present in the market as well. So why should we go for Power BI? There are numerous reasons for it, but let's just look at some of the points. The first one is its user-friendly interaction. When you jump into Power BI, you don't feel unknown to the place. If you're familiar with how things work in Power BI, they're right in front of you. You don't need to go ahead and code your things. You can just perform clicks and Power BI will do the job for you. It's a very intelligent tool and it makes business intelligence look very easy. The second one is extensive data connectivity. Now, to perform analysis, you should be able to connect your data source. For the same purpose, Power BI provides us with more than 250 data source connectors. The third and the most important part is robust visualization. The visualizations that you create in Power BI, you have 100% control over that. You can select which visualization should be part of which field. You can customize the visualizations to the very depth of it. And all of the styling and customizations can be taken care of in Power BI. The next one is its scalability and integration with other Microsoft tools. Now, Microsoft Power BI is one of the tools of Microsoft 365 suite. So there are other tools as well, namely Microsoft Power Automate, Microsoft Power Apps. Microsoft Power BI seamlessly integrates with these apps, giving your reports much more extensiveness, right? You can now take automated steps from data alerts in your report. You can now have an app-like experience using Power App by integrating it with Microsoft Power BI. Let's go ahead and look up and talk about two different components of Power BI that actually constitute the business intelligence. The first component is Power BI Service. Now, Power BI Service is a cloud platform and a collection of different Power BI components. All of the reports that we develop, all of the dashboards that we create, all of the data sets that are associated with our Power BI reports, different data flows and data marts, all of these are stored in a in a cloud platform which is called as Power BI Service. Now, developers can go into Power BI Service, sign into their own account, and can share the report contents with other teammates or people outside the organization. With this experience, working with single reports and collaborating with an entire team is very easy and seamless. The second component is Power BI Desktop. Now, Power BI Desktop is a standalone application which gives you a variety of features to enhance your report. Now, as we talked about connecting to our database, so Power BI Desktop is the exact tool which gives you 250 plus connectors, right? You can modify your data in Power BI Desktop and then publish the report contents to Power BI Service for collaboration. Now, when we talk about analyzing data in Power BI, we can break down the entire step into 5 different stages. The first one, as we mentioned, it's a data import stage, a stage where we connect to our data source and bring in the data into Power BI. The second stage is data transformation. When you have connected to your data store, you are still left with the raw data only. You haven't transformed it or cleaned it. Power BI gives you a separate window, which we call as Power Query Transform window. Now, in this window, the raw data which you have extracted from your data source can be brought in and can be cleaned according to your business requirement, and then visualizations can be performed on top of them. Now, the third stage is data modeling. Data modeling is our way of telling Power BI how different report components are communicating with each other. If there are multiple tables, how they are related to each other. All of this structure and uh, all of this process comes under data modeling. Now, the next step, when we are sure that we have modeled the data perfectly, we have all of our data fields in place, we then want to create interactive visualizations on top of it, which is covered in the visual creation stage. Now, once we are done developing the report, once we have created all of the visualization that are supposed to be a part of report, we then publish it to Power BI service, where where our entire team can view it, add their comments, add their collaborations, and even share it with other teammates. Now, let's go ahead and look into these stages in detail. Now, for the first stage, which is data import, Power BI gives you flexibility to connect to an Excel data source, a fact file data source, a database, which can be SQL, and any other database of your choice. Power BI also supports the loading of structured and unstructured data. So your data source shouldn't necessarily be in a tabular format. It can be of any Power BI readable format, and Power BI will be able to read data from itself. Now, Power BI can also connect to web API services, which helps us analyze data in near real time. Correct. Now, let's go to the next part of it and see how Power BI gives you the option of connecting to your data sources, right? So if you can see right here, this is the option. This is how you can actually see all of the available data sources in Power BI. You can just type out your data source name. Power BI will give you all of the related data source available to it. You can just select it and connect, and then Power BI will take you to the data source configuration page. Next, once we are connected to our data source, once there is a connection built between Power BI and data source, Power BI then asks you how do you want to bring in the data into Power BI. So there are two connection modes with Power BI allows you. The first one is direct query mode, and the second one is import mode. What happens in direct query mode is Power BI directly connects to the data source without duplicating or storing the data within its own memory. Okay. So it gives us the feature of analyzing data in near real time because we are directly bringing the data source. We are directly bringing the data from our data source. We are not making use of any middle memory, right? We are not storing data in Power BI. So we can be sure about that whatever data we are seeing in the end result of a Power BI report is actually the live data which sits into our original data source. Now the second mode is import mode. What happens in import mode is we actually bring in the data from the data source into Power BI's own memory so that data retrieval is faster and Power BI can store it within itself. Now, there are a couple of limitations for each of these modes. So the first one in direct query mode is When you directly connect to your data in the data source, you cannot actually modify it in Power BI. So all of the features of data modification in Power BI cannot be leveraged in this mode. Whereas in import mode, as Power BI is bringing the data in and it's storing in its own memory, all of the features of data modeling or data transformation are available in the import mode. When we talk about connections to web API, we preferably use direct query mode because we are sure that the response of the API request that we are getting will be the live data. Now, let's say, for example, we have some static data in any of the databases, which does not usually gets updated in in a month or so. Then we can surely take a snapshot of the data and load it into Power BI using the import mode. So I'll just take a short break here and see if any of the participants have any questions. You can just type out your questions in the chat box and I'll be happy to answer them. Okay, I guess we are good at this point, so we can move forward. Thank you. Okay, now this is how Power BI gives you the flexibility of choosing your data mode. You can see it gives you an option of either connecting it via import mode or direct query mode. Before moving to the next stage, which is data transformation, we need to understand about a formula language which is called as DEX. Now, DEX is a formula-based language which makes it very easy for us to perform calculations in Power BI. Once we bring in data into Power BI, it might not actually fit in the business requirements that we are going to solve. We might need to perform additional calculations which otherwise wouldn't be possible in Power BI. Now, to leverage that, we need to make use of DEX. So, what are the use cases of DEX? Where can we use DEX actually? So, DEX can be used to create different report components, which are calculated tables, columns, and measures. It can help you filter and slice your data. It can help you perform time intelligence functions on your data, and it can help you perform advanced analytics. Now, when we talk about advanced analytics, we mean that the scope of the calculation can be extended to one or multiple tables, which makes it very easy for us to combine data from different tables. Now, the advantage of DEX is that it's very flexible, its integration with Power BI data model is very seamless. It reads the entire structure and all of the different functions that are available in DEX can be utilized to create a beautiful Power BI report. Now, we mentioned that the use cases of DEX covers creating report components like calculated table, columns, and measures, right? So in the next slide, let's look into what are these three different components, correct? The first one is a calculated table. Now, assume when you bring in data into Power BI in your data model, you can have multiple tables, correct? Now, if those tables aren't sufficient and you want to create another table which consists of field from all of these tables, you can go ahead and use DEX to create a calculated table. Now, the same thing can be done with columns as well. But there is slight change in it. The scope of creating calculated table is the entire report. You can use multiple tables to create a calculated table, while you can only create a single calculated or a calculated table for a specific table only, right? Now the third one is calculated measure. A calculated measure is similar to calculated column, but it only takes in aggregations. Aggregation as in, let's say for example, you have two columns A and B. Now, if you want to create a measure which will aggregate B based on A's value, we can actually do that. That couldn't have been possible with calculated columns. Now, there are certain limitations attached to each of these report components. Like when we talk about calculated tables and columns, if we create multiple amounts of calculated tables and columns, it can slightly decrease the performance of our data model. Now, as I just mentioned, calculated measures only work with aggregation, which means if you're trying to perform plain or simple calculations based on column values, you won't be able to do that. You will have to specify aggregations to write a measure formula. Now let's move forward and see what's the next stage of analysis in Power BI is. Before that, let's actually go ahead and see how we can distinguish between different report components. So in my left-hand side, you can see that I have two tables. The first one is DS salary and the second one is job title and year. If you can closely focus on the icons of these, you will see that this one is a standard table. Now this one, which has a calculated icon on top of it, is a calculated table. So we have utilized DEX functions to create this new table. Similarly, on the right hand side, if you see the first report component that I have, it has a calculated icon attached to it, which helps it to stand out as a measure. The second column, which is broader category, it's the standard field of a table. And migration required, if you just focus on the icon, it shows you a column icon with a function logo, and this can be considered as a calculated column. So this is how you can figure out between different report components and what are the components we have included in our report. Now, the next stage of analysis in Power BI is actually transformation. Transformation can be considered as very important because raw data is of no use to us until and unless we create something useful out of it. Now, Power BI, as we just mentioned, opens up a new window altogether, which is called as Power BI Query window, and it gives you immense features to actually transform your data, which is in raw format, into some beautiful data model. Correct? Now we can handle missing values, we can handle duplicate values, we can have different kind of transformations like changing data types, appending and merging different tables, combining different tables from a single file source, and whatnot. Now, just a small point to highlight here, we can perform advanced transformations in Power Query window as well. And to perform that, we make use of M language. Now understand, text cannot be used in Power Query window. Okay. And we cannot create measures in Power Query window because measures do not actually imply in your data table structure. It just gives you a different view of your data. Correct? Now we can have automated data transformations as well by creating some reusable query, which are called functions. We can invoke functions into different stages for our transformation that can help us save time because we can reuse functions multiple times as we want. We also have parameters in Power Query window, which help you to make your report dynamic. Moving forward, after we have transformed our data, right? Let's say, for example, we have brought in our data and there are 5 tables inside our data model, correct? Now we have transformed each of these tables and now they fit our business requirements. What now? We now need to tell Power BI how these 5 tables are communicating with each other. And to do that, we make use of relationships. So relationships just tell Power BI if you are bringing data from multiple tables, how they should look into the final visualization. Now, there are different types of relationships that we can go ahead and define in Power BI. The first one is many one-to-one. The second one is one-to-many. The third one is many-to-many, many-to-one, and then many-to-many. So assume you have 2 tables and there are 2 columns in different tables, right? The first column name is A, the second column name is B. Now, if we have a value of A1 in A and if we have a value of B1 in B, one-to-one specifies that A1 will have only one value in A column and B1 will have only one value in B column. Whereas one-to-many means A1 can have only one value in A column, whereas B1 can have multiple values in B column. Many-to-one is just the vice versa of one-to-many. And many-to-many means A1 can have multiple values in A column and B1 can have multiple values in B column. Now, relationships are very essential because at the end of the day, how we communicate, how tables communicate with each other will determine the performance of your DEX query. Now, there is an advanced concept which is known as direction of relationship, which is not in the scope of this session today, but yeah, that plays a very important role in your query performance as well. The next stage of analysis, before that, let's look how relationship actually looks in Power BI. So if you can see in the top graphic that we have got here, there are 3 different tables available to us and all of them are not interacting with each other. They do not have a relationship. They just mutually exist there. The second one is how we manage relationship. Let's say, for example, there is a relationship which we have created. So if you open the manage relationship window, these are the set of options that you are going to get. Now, once you hit any relationship, hit on the edit button. This is how you can edit a particular created relationship in Power BI. You can actually change the column mapping to which column we want the relationship to be built upon. And then yes, Power BI will go ahead and perform that relationship. Now let's come to the most important part of Power BI and the most important part of our report, visualization. Now understand, we have our table data in the cleanest of format, right? Anyone who can read or who can understand your data the table should be sufficient for them, right? Understand this. Visualization help you get insights in a very quick manner. Okay, you don't have to look through different columns or go through different rows to figure out exactly what data content you need in your data analysis. Visualization makes it very easy for you to see different views of your data. Correct. Now, Power BI, especially users use Power BI because there are a ton of visualizations which we can go ahead and build. Also, if you just focus here, these are the standard set of visualizations that Power BI offer to us. Okay. And all of these visualizations are of drag and drop configuration, which means we don't have to write a piece of code to configure our visualization. You can drag and drop them into our report canvas. We can select our data fields that we want to be a part of our visualization, and then Power BI will configure the visualization according to our needs. The second one is customize visual to vary depth. Now, if we have a visualization built and if you want to change the styling of it, change how it communicates to other visual, change if you can extract the output of it, all of this different customizations is taken care of in Power BI. You can change the styling of it, you can conditionally format it, you can make it dynamic, and Power BI itself is very intelligent. So if you have a slicer in your report, Power BI will automatically adapt to it. Now, this last one is export of data visual at different levels of granularity, which means if you have a visual, let's say, suppose you have a pie chart and you want to get the data extract of it so that you can analyze it in a different tool as well. Power BI allows you to do that. You can extract data from all of the different visualizations that are existing in Power BI. Now, once we combine visualizations, there are particular Power BI components that we can create. Correct. Now, let's say, for example, you have combined 10 or 20 visuals in a single sheet of paper. That single sheet of paper can be called as a report because report is a formatted collection of visualization, right? And it depends upon you how you want your visualizations to look in. Okay, you can then combine visualizations according to you in your report canvas, but a collection of visualizations is called as a report. Now, a dashboard, on the other hand, is a single page view of your report components. Reports can have multiple pages based upon the requirements, right? Based upon the user experience you want to give to the end users. But a dashboard will always be a single page view of your data components. The third is custom visuals. So don't think that these are the only limited visualizations that you can create in Power BI. Power BI offers you the option of having custom visuals. In the next slide, we are going to see how many different custom visuals are possible in Power BI. The last one is script visual. Script visual allows you to write a piece of code to actually configure your visualization. Okay, so you do not have to directly go with the configurations of Power BI. If you want to manually configure a visualization, you can write a script for it and choose R or Python script visualizations to actually go ahead and see how the piece of code which you have written looks in Power BI. Now, the next step is to see how custom visuals work in Power BI. So if you can see here, apart from the standard visualizations that we have, these are all of the different visualizations that you can create in Power BI. Correct? Now, if you want to go for this visualization, you can just click on it. Power BI will take a couple of seconds to load it, and then you can directly add it to your report. Correct? You can actually go ahead, see a sample of it. You can actually go ahead and download a sample visualization of it, or you can directly add it to your report. And Power BI will just go ahead and add it to the visualization pane. If you just add it, Power BI will take a couple of seconds. And yeah, you can see that the visualization is added in your visualization pane. Now let's come to the part where we want to share and collaborate with other team members. Before discussing this, I would like to take a couple of seconds back and I'll see that if participants have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer that.
Shreyansh, I believe you have been excellent. That's why we don't have any more questions as of now. We're pretty clear.
Okay. I'll take that as a compliment and we'll move forward in this webinar then. Okay. So let's come to the part where we want to share and collaborate with other team members using the report which we have written, right? So we can make use of workspaces. Now, workspace is a collection of related Power BI components, right? Let's say, for example, you have built a report and you published it. Now, it will get published in a workspace. The report component, along with the data set which it has been built upon, will be published to a single workspace. Now, this workspace has access level control over it, which means each workspace has four access controls. The first one is admin, the second one is a member, the third one is a contributor, and the fourth one is a viewer, which means you can give access based on these access controls, and Power BI will automatically adjust the reading rights, the editing rights, and all of the different access controls based on these roles. Also, Power BI allows you to create apps. Let's say, for example, we have a very bulky workspace, right? But there is an end user who wants to see just two reports. We don't want to give him the access to the entire workspace. We can go ahead and select those two unique reports that the end user wants to see, and then we can put it in an app and share that app with the end user. Okay, it will not only allow the user to see what's relevant to him, it will also restrict our other different entities from that end user. Now, talking of security, we know how much data professionals love their security, right? They don't want their data to get breached. So Power BI gives you extensive security for your data. It keeps encryption both when the data is in transit and at rest. So if you're storing it in Power BI as well, your data is in an encrypted format. Now, the most important part of it, Power BI allows you to perform row level security, right? So let's take a step back and understand what is row level security. Imagine you have a data set that has data coming from 5 demographics, right? Now, each of these demographic has a regional manager of its own, correct? Now, when we build a standard reports which has data from 5 different demographics, we don't want managers or like regional managers of each country to look into others' regional data, right? What Power BI will do in this case is it will restrict each of the demographic data to the respective regional manager only. Now we will make use of different kind of roles in Power BI to implement this security. The last one is auditing and monitoring capabilities, which means once you have given access to someone in the workspace, they can actually come in and they can view the performance of your reports, how frequently the reports are getting refreshed, what are the other, who else has viewed the reports and whatnot. So this is how Power BI takes care of your security. Now, I think we have talked about a lot of theory in here, correct? So in the next slide, we are actually going to see how Power BI performs end-to-end analysis by itself, right? So this is a small demonstration on how you can connect to a data source, how you can bring in the data, how you can transform it a bit, how to load it in back to your Power BI window, how to create small visualizations, how to publish it, and then share it. So let's just take a step back and let us go through the demo first. So if you look here, we can choose our data source file. Okay. Power BI will take a couple of seconds to read it. Then it will actually allow you which sheet do you want to import. Once you hit on the sheet, Power BI will show you a preview of your data, right? Now you can, from at this point, you can understand that Power BI is successful in reading data from your data source, right? Now the next step is actually to go ahead and transform the data. We are pretty sure that this data is not the cleanest of data, right? So we can go ahead and transform it. Just a second. Okay, correct. So here is the preview of our data points. Now if you select this sheet and go ahead and load the data into Power BI, or sorry, transform it, then Power BI will go ahead and open a separate window for us. So this is Power Query window. Okay, you can see how Power BI nicely shows us all of the columns in our data report. Okay, and it also shows you the column distribution, what are the different, what are the other few information about your columns, like how many different distinct values are there. Also notice how easily I can change my table name here, right? I don't need to go to any options. If I just double click on the table name, I'll be able to change the table name. Let's say if I want to change the column header, I can just double click on it and be able to change the column header name. Now let's go ahead and see how we can perform an operation. So let's say, for example, we want to replace a certain value. So this is just clicks. You don't need to write any code to configure it. You can just use clicks to perform these operations right here. To change the data type, we can go ahead and change the data type of our data columns as well. Once we are done with the data transformations, we'll go ahead and load these transformations back into our model. Okay. So if you go ahead, you'll notice that Power BI is taking some time to actually see what transformations we have applied. It's then creating a connection into our data model. And in a couple of seconds, you will see that the data is being loaded into our model, right? Power BI, once it loads the entirety of data, it will give us a notification that, okay, the data has been loaded and these are the number of records that are loaded into your data set. Now, once the data is loaded, you can actually go ahead and see all of the different data fields that you have there. Okay. So if you click on the drop down, you'll be able to see all the fields that are present in the table. Correct. So these are the different fields that are available with us. Now, next, we go to the data view. Now, view gives you the accessibility of customizing your data columns from this view itself. You don't need to go back to the transformation window every time. So there are these transformations that you can perform on a single column in this data view. Correct? Perfect. Now let's go back. So these are the different customizations. Now let's go back to the previous view, which is the report view. Correct. Let's go back to the report view and we see how to create a visualization in Power BI. So you see this visualization pane right here. This is your report canvas, right? This is where you add your visuals and you configure your visuals. If you notice, I've just drag and dropped a single visualization. And what I'm going to do right now is select columns from my data tables right there, correct? If I select two columns, you will see that Power BI has taken both of them column. Now notice I'm trying to perform an aggregation in Power BI, right? So without the use of measure, we can actually go ahead and perform aggregations in Power BI, but measure gives you more control over it. Okay, you can have your custom functions into it so that you don't have to go with the standard aggregations that are present in Power BI. Let's go ahead and see. So this is a short visualization where we are viewing the number of employees by department, right? And we didn't do any calculations till now. We just used the standard functions that are available in Power BI, correct? Now let's say I want to configure another visualization, but this time it's not a table like this, it's a slicer. Now let's see how slicer impacts our visualizations, right? So I didn't do anything in this slicer as well. I just selected the column which I want to filter this table upon, right? Now notice what will happen if I select a single value in this table or in this slicer. Notice this, whenever we select a single value from this slicer, Power BI automatically adjusts this visualization, understanding that you want to look for the data information respective to engineering department only. We don't have to configure anything to let Power BI know that, okay, impact this visualization by this visualization. All of the visualization which are present in a single report page can interact with each other like this. Okay, perfect. Now, once we are done with this visualization, let's suppose this is the only part which we want to have in our report, right? So we'll go ahead and save the report first. You can give it a name of your choice. And then you will go ahead and publish it into your desired workspace. Correct. Right now, I'll go ahead and publish it in my workspace because that's a workspace that is a default workspace that's allocated to every is a default workspace in every Power BI account. So I'll go ahead and I'll publish it in my workspace only. Correct. Now we'll take a break here. We understood that, okay, this is how you perform or this is how you create visualizations in Power BI. We saw that we connect to a data source. We saw that we can transform the data source. We saw that we can load the data back into our data model. And we saw that it's very easy to create visualization in Power BI. And we also saw that we can just save the report and publish it. And now Power BI report is published in Power BI service. Okay, it's no more in your local file. It's there in the cloud. Let's just go ahead into the next slide and see what happens and see how we can use this same file to actually go ahead and publish your report. So think about this. I have just created a different visualization which shows you the different department and the number of employees present in it. Now let's say I want to collaborate with other members and I want to share this report. Now let's look at how easy it is for us to go ahead and share a report from Power BI service. I can directly share it using this option right here, which allows me to enter the email addresses of the end user. Okay. I can go ahead and export the report contents in any of these formats, which is Excel, PowerPoint, and PDF. So these are the default extraction modes. I can also go ahead and embed this report into different portals. Now, this is how Power BI enables you to interact with it in a very easy way. It can actually go ahead and embed this entire report which we have created into a website or a portal, or it can actually go ahead and publish it on web in public. So anyone can view your created report. Okay, perfect. Now let's go ahead and understand this. Now we are not sure that Power BI is taking up the latest data from our data source or not, correct? So there is a concept in Power BI called as scheduled refreshing, which enables us to get the latest data out of our data sources. So let's quickly understand how the option of scheduled refresh is enabled in Power BI. So assume these are your data sets, right? You can actually see the first one is a report, the second one is a data set. You can go to the setting of your data set, and herein you will see an option of refresh. Now, when you turn on the refresh, you can set the frequency of the refresh. You can set the time zone of the refresh. You can go ahead and select the data set owners, which means if the refresh is not performed ideally, who are all of the members that are going to get informed by it? Correct? So that brings us to the end of this amazing webinar that we just conducted. Any questions? If anyone has any questions right now, I'll be happy to answer that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Shreyansh, we have multiple questions. I will be throwing those questions one by one to you, and you can take it up, right?
Sure,
So the
sure.
first question is from Naveen Kumar. He asks, please explain DAX, which is DAX, with an example.
Okay. So let's suppose example. So right now we just saw that Power BI performs standard aggregation by itself, right? We saw that we can view the number of employees just by dragging and dropping the employee column and selecting the standard aggregation for it. Now let's say if we want to perform a custom aggregation where we want to have a different function, but we want to have the sum by a certain condition. We want to have the count, but we only want it for a single department, engineering department. Now, Power BI ideally will not allow you to have that filter on top of a column, existing column. So we can create a new measure. We can use the function which is called as calculate. Calculate is a DEX function which gives you the flexibility to have an aggregation and also apply a filter on top of it. So I can share the syntax of DEX, obviously, but this is how you can write a DEX. You can have the first calculation, you are calculating an aggregation. The second one is the aggregation. And the third one is a filter which you can apply on top of that aggregation.
Great. Thanks. Thanks for this explanation. Another question is from Mridul Gupta. He asks, can we add alerts on dashboards?
Definitely. That's a very interesting question. So we use Power BI to interact with financial data as well, right? So there can be key matrices in your report as well. And you can, yes, definitely set alerts in your Power BI dashboard report using from Power BI service itself.
Great. Question from Vanshika Jain. She asks, can we connect AWS DynamoDB and AWS RDS with Power BI?
So that's a restriction for now, Vanshika. We don't have default connectors to AWS AWS DynamoDB till now. There are workarounds, but there is no direct connector to it right now. So there is a small restriction about the data connected there.
Great. Another question from Prabhat Srivastava. He asks, you have mentioned the concept of role level security. Could you please provide an explanation of its meaning?
Okay, so we have already taken up an example. Let's understand about it in a depth. Okay, so say for example, I along with few of our other members, just give me a single second. Perfect. So let's say I, along with three of my other members, are viewing a report, correct? Now that report consists data from 5 different regions. Okay. Now we have our own email addresses, and when we log into Power BI reads that email address and it restricts the data which is sitting there in your report to only show the condition which we have applied for that email. Now, if I have created a role in Power BI desktop, which will show me the data corresponding to USA and UK, when I log into Power BI and I see this report, the same report, I will see the data set or the data corresponding to US and UK. The other role which has been created to view data from Germany, maybe, when the second person will view the same report, he or she will see only the data corresponding to Germany and not the countries that we just mentioned. So this is how row level security can actually control the view of your report for different demographics.
Okay. Another question again from Ridul. He asked, is it possible to add custom transformation?
You'll have to provide me with more clarity about that. Custom transformation as in how? Like,
This is the only question. What I will request Mridul is to write separately to Bhagyashree and you, and of course
definitely,
you can take this question, right? So
definitely,
Mridul, we
definitely.
can do that. Or you can write to me also directly. I will pass it on to Shreyansh if needed. Uh, Another question from Abhishek Kumar Dwivedi. He asked, where we can do calculated columns and measures?
Okay, so once we have transformed the data set, once we have created a data model on top of it, you can go ahead and create calculated columns and views in this report view. So this is your report canvas, right? This is the area where you can drag and drop all of these slices, all of these visualizations, and you can give them the shape of your choice, right? Here in this view itself, the data label, which is hidden in this demo, the data label will actually allow you to create calculated columns and measures.
Okay, great. I think that's it from the question Q&A side. Vanshika, you can of course write to Shreyansh and Bhagyashree for any further doubts. I would like to take this opportunity to absolutely thank Shreyansh. First of all, Shreyansh, you have been amazing. You have explained these concepts in such a simple way that a novice like me who has no idea about Power BI now has basic framework, right? So this is excellent effort from your side. I would also like to thank Bhagyashree and Tech Leaders Forum who have enabled this particular webinar series that we would be conducting in future as well. I would also like to thank our IT team, which has managed this effort pretty nicely. In the end, before we depart, I think we have Abhishek Talwar with us. Let me see if Abhishek Desa is here. Yeah. So I would just like to
I am here. I
ask
am here.
Abhishek.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would just like to ask him if he can put forward few words before we depart today. Abhishek, over to you, please.
Yeah. Thanks everyone. Firstly for attending this session. Shreyansh, I'm happy to see you take up the first webinar. Taking up something which is first is tough, but the visibility is very high. Uh, but even to my standards, your presentation was very, very nice. It was interactive, it was clear, and it was very crisp. I am very impressed with your presentation skills. The way you paused for taking questions, etc., shows quite a lot of maturity. In addition, I'd like to thank Bhagyashree for coming up with this idea and seeing it the light of the day. Um, One small thought I had was Power BI is something that can be learned by every developer, even by every quality engineer, and I'll not even hesitate that even HR can use it to write powerful reporting without much help from external people. So this is a medium that people should start learning. And we have seen in the past, I don't know, I want to tell two stories of the past. I'm not sure how many people know that. The first story is there was a quality engineer who started writing Power BI and was able to migrate into the development field. So Hexaview encourages you to move to more fields once you have some kinds of skills in place. And the second story I have is I don't know Kalyan is here or not, but many, many years ago, we got a project in Power BI, and I still remember I went to Kalyan and said, what do we do about it? Kalyan said, let's take the project. Kalyan, do you remember that? Abhishek, can you enable unmuting for Kalyan? So
Yeah, let me just.
many years back, Kalyan said I can take it up. I then searched for a training for Kalyan, and he said these guys are giving me 7 days training. I learned from YouTube myself in 2 days, and we executed that project very well for the client with very less external help. So just wanted that small fact to be known to everyone
Yep,
many
I
years
have
ago.
given rights to Kalyan. Yeah, Kalyan, please go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, six. So actually, I remember that things. So I think that was around 2017 or 18.
Right. So it was so Power BI is not new for Hexaview. It's been there, but it came and went. But again, Shreyansh, you have been great to take up this session. Continue your good work, and any help that you can do to Hexaview will be very happy to do that. I want to also end with thanking Abhishek Nandan and the IT team for their respective efforts in organizing this. So I'm very happy to see everyone out there in participating for this webinar. I'll encourage that others also participate into this webinar, and there should be some kind of a learning certificate or a memento that should be given to every speaker if that is not already incorporated. I'll talk to Bhagyashree separately for that, but we'll incorporate a memento for every speaker who comes and gives a webinar. So thanks again, Shreyansh. It's a great initiative.
Thank you, Abhishek.
Thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. It was a masterful session from Shreyans, and we hope to continue this journey with all of you. Do participate in uh, various future initiatives from Hexaview. It's your team, it's your family. Good day from us here, and have a great rest of the weekend. Bye bye, all. Take care, please.